What if Michael Jordan didn't take off 2 seasons to play baseball? Would he have won in 94? Would he have won the 95? That would have been 8 in a row, and the GOAT conversation would have been over. Check it out.
All right, so first, let's get it started with 1994. When you look at it, that 93-94 Bulls roster was actually stronger than the roster that won the championship back in 93.
They added my man, the Croatian sensation, Tony Kukoc, Luke Longley, Steve Kerr. They already had Scotty on the team, Horace Grant, and B.J. Armstrong. If they had Jordan on that team, it might have been one of their 2 best teams that they ever had.
If you trade Rodman out for Horace Grant, you got a team that's basically looking like that 72-10 squad. But without Jordan, 93-94 team finished with a 55-27 record and the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
And in the playoffs, they swept the Cavs. Then they lost to my Knicks in a hard-fought Game 7. But if MJ was in there, I don't know what happens then.
As we kind of look at the playoffs and try to reenact this with Jordan, obviously they swept Cleveland without Jordan. So I think you throw Jordan in the mix, nothing changes. It's still a sweep in the first round.
Yeah, but if you got Jordan, they probably would have been a higher seed, so they might have played a different team or different teams in that sequence, but we don't got to get into all that.
Like you said, second round, the Bulls lost to the 2-seeded Knicks, 7 games. So the big question is whether that outcome would have been different if Jordan was there.
Game 1, they had the vicious Pete Myers starting in place of Jordan, and the Knicks won by 4 at the Garden. Myers finished with an astronomical 2 points. You ask me, if they had Jordan, I think the Bulls would have been a little better off, and I think Jordan would have put up a little bit of a better game.
Michael Jordan for Pete Myers, like I didn't even remember Pete Myers. I had to look him up, and I still didn't remember him. So, I think his 2 points and a 4-point loss, it's reasonable to assume that with Jordan, they would have gotten a better performance and actually won Game 1.
In Game 2, the Knicks won by 5 at home. Pete Myers continued his excellence, that stretch, and put up another 2 points. It's hard to imagine the Bulls with Jordan losing that Game 2.
If you make that leap, right, with Jordan, they win those first 2 games in New York, which is crazy. They're going back to Chicago, and they're already up 2-0. When we look at Game 3, it was a 2-point Bulls win. So I think we're saying nothing would change there with Jordan there.
Yeah, I mean, unless Pete Myers was going to drop 50 that night, that's a Bulls win.
Big Pete dropped an astronomical, he tripled his average, got it to 6 points that game.
Ooh.
And then in Game 4, he dropped 6 again in a 12-point Bulls win. So again, nothing changes there. This could be a sweep.
Yeah, but I don't know if the Knicks would have gotten swept. That team was too proud. But I say maybe the Bulls are up 3-1 at this point, and we're going back to the Garden.
Yeah, I don't think the Knicks are getting swept either. I mean, they probably would have thrown a couple punches, started a fight, got Jordan suspended a game just so they could try to get an advantage back knowing that team.
For argument's sake, let's look at the rest of the series anyway.
Game 5. The Knicks won by a single point, and Pete Myers scored 5 in place of Jordan. It's a 1-point loss to the Knicks.
So there it is. The Bulls win this series 4-1. But let's look at the other games. Game 6 back in Chicago. The Bulls won by 14. In fact, the only game in this series that you could say the Knicks would have likely won would have been Game 7, because Pistol Pete Myers scored 15, and the Knicks still won by 14 in the Garden.
The Bulls with Jordan very well could have won 6 of those by our calculations, and I think we agree they win the series, whether it's 4-0, 4-1, 4-2.
The Bulls struggled against the Knicks in 93, and that was with Jordan in the playoffs. But like we said, the 93 Bulls roster wasn't as good as 94. The only notable change to the Knicks roster from 93 to 94 was the addition of Derek Harper, who I like Derek Harper, but I don't know if he's that much of a tide shift.
The king of the hand check back when you could do that too.
Remember the Poom Poom shorts?
Oh, yes.
Derek Harper, even though you got Weber and Jalen Rose, they were coming with the long shorts, Harper stayed true. He came out with the Stocktons.
They were saying the Bulls move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, in the actual 94 playoffs, the Knicks moved on, obviously, and they played the Pacers and beat them in 7 games.
The Knicks won at the Garden in Game 7 by 4, 94-90. That's when the teams played defense. So what would have happened if it was Bulls and Pacers?
If you look at the season series, without Jordan, of course, the Bulls were 4-1 against the Pacers, and they matched up well against the Pacers, too, looking at the teams.
That was a good team, bro. They were physical, and they had the shooter. So I had Reggie, Dale Davis, Derek McKee, Rick Smits, Vern Fleming, Byron Scott, Antonio Davis coming off the bench. They were physical. That was a real team, and a lot of people these days, they overlook that team.
That team was big on the inside. They were tough, and obviously the big weapon on offense was Reggie.
The Bulls could actually handle the paces. They rostered 6 centers, bro. They were all big body guys, and plus they had Horace Grant, power forward. Not the most skilled guys with an offensive bag, but these guys were players. Rebounds, defense, they clogged the middle. They were official.
On the outside, you got Pippen and Jordan, who are both all-time great defenders, and you could switch them off on Reggie and effectively minimize his impact on the game.
They had Kukoc coming off the bench. He scored buckets. They had Paxson, Kerr, BJ Armstrong. All them guys were raining from outside. They had a squad.
The matchups, I think, favor the Bulls. The season record clearly favors the Bulls. And in this series, the Bulls will be the 3 seed. They would have had home court advantage. And by the way, they won 75% of their home games without Jordan that year.
Yo, if you ask me, it's safe to assume the Bulls would have took the Pacers out in that series. What do you think?
I think so. This is all hypotheticals, but we're trying to be reasonable, trying to be objective. I think the Bulls could have won that series.
I'd say 5 games, max 6, because Jordan don't really like game 7s. And if you say it goes game 7, Mike ain't losing it anyway, especially at home. All right, so this takes us to the finals against the Rockets. Now, I remember this one because that was the year the Rockets beat my Knicks in 7 games, and it was so heartbreaking. I remember it clear as day, bro.
And I don't want to rub salt in your wounds, but you remember that game 7, I'm sure, as a Knicks fan.
John Starks was throwing cinder blocks off the it was bad, bro. It was bad. I remember we were all watching it. It was our year. That was it. The towels were waving. We all had the white towels, and we didn't see Starks having that game, bro. It was just bad. He missed the first one, the second one, the third one. He kept missing. And we were like, all right, this one, let him go to halftime, let him rest. He's gonna come out and scorch the third and the fourth. And that shit just carried the whole game, bro.
He ended up going 2 for 18. They only lost that game by 6 points. So if he had played up to his normal standard, the Knicks would have won that game and the series. So the Rockets actually got pretty lucky in a way.
Bro, he could have shot 30% and they would have won. But don't remind me. Let's get on to what would have happened if it was the Bulls and the Rockets.
So that season, the Bulls and Rockets only played twice, but they split the series 1-1.
We can anticipate a tight series, I guess. But what about the matchups throughout? I mean, the first question is, who do the Bulls have for Hakeem the Dream?
Nobody's going to be able to match up with Hakeem. They had 6 centers. They could have been throwing him out there just hacking away, just beating him up like teams did back then.
That would have took a toll, but that would have took a toll on anybody. They would have had to play physical with Olajuwon.
He obviously wins whatever matchup he's got. You got Otis Thorpe versus Horace Grant at power forward. Call it a pretty even matchup.
What about Kenny Smith at point? Sam Cassell.
The Bulls had a nice little trio. I mean, BJ Armstrong was kind of at his peak. He was playing really well. John Paxson and Steve Kerr, you're going to at least stretch the floor, make them defend the 3-pointer, that type of thing.
The Rockets, don't forget, they had my man Mr. Big Shot. They had Robert Horry. They have Vernon Maxwell. But those guys are facing off against Pippen and Jordan. We all know what time it is there.
Kukoc coming off the bench as well. The Bulls bench was, a little better than that Rockets bench. Pretty good matchup. Season series is split. This is without Jordan, of course. I think this one will be a good series. Probably goes at least 6, maybe 7 if Hakeem has a great series. And what they always needed, the Rockets, they always needed that second guy to have a big game. One time it was Vernon Maxwell. One time it was Sam Cassell. But if they don't get that consistently and you got the Bulls with Jordan, that's a tight series.
But come on, enough is enough. Jordan in the finals, game 6, I'd say he wins his 4th straight finals. He's never been to a 7th game. What makes you think he's going to go to the 7 games this series? What makes you think he was going to lose this finals? You ask me, that's 4 in a row, and we're going to put that GOAT conversation to bed.
I agree. I think the Bulls have the edge there. I mean, they've been there before. The 3 years prior, they had the experience. They had Jordan in this, in how we're reenacting this.
But that's 4 straight rings. The moment of truth. Here you go. Ready? If he gets 1 in 95, that makes it 8 straight rings. Do we even have to have a GOAT discussion at that point?
No, if he gets it in 95, which we're about to get into, then it's definitely over. But 95 was a different beast than 94. 94, I can look myself in the mirror and say the Bulls likely win that. 95, we'll talk about.